you want me to give a little bit of a background first?
Hi,
Adriana?
all. Hi, I'd just like to welcome everyone here from our live broadcast in County Carlow, the heart of Leinster. So we've just done, I suppose, an online public meeting on the food production crisis, the crisis for small and medium farmers that is happening across Ireland today and globally. I suppose you could see that both lives and livelihoods have been put at risk by COVID-19, and it's significantly affected the food supply and demand. There's been nearly a complete loss of the hospitality sector and therefore kind of relationships on the back of it. And the virus has exposed the inequality in the sector overall. About 2/3 of all small and medium of all family farms in Ireland are economically unviable. So that leaves a lot of people in very difficult situation, and a lot of farmers are actually working every day, but they're not making enough to make ends meet. They're actually at a loss when it comes to it. So we are joined today then, and I think it's important to say that the government supports have not gone far enough for small and medium enterprises, that once again we're kind of seeing that it's business as usual for the big boys. The meat factory have been able to operate at full capacity despite the fact that there has been massive increase in clusters of COVID-19 there, despite the fact that there's a worker died in up north in one of the meat factories, and very little has been done to sanction this, even though it is a public health crisis. So we're really calling for more HSA inspections, for more health and safety for the workers that are involved, and for those meat plants to be closed for at least 2 weeks to make sure that they can be properly fumigated, workers can be tested, and that there's isolation units set up where needs be, because this is a public health crisis. But unfortunately, the profits of the few on top of the food chain, quite literally, are getting away with an awful lot here. So we have brought together some fantastic speakers. First on, we have Tome Stephenson. Tome Stephenson is from the Beef Farmers Crisis Discussion Group. Now, I first met Tom myself when we went out on the pickets for the beef farmers here, and they were a great bunch of guys. We were down in Hackettstown with them, and you could really see that they were out there every day fighting for farmers, putting their neck on the line, and fair play to them for doing that. And we're still in talks. There's still a lot of work needs to be done in this department. So Tom's going to speak to us for a few minutes on this issue. Secondly, then we have Edmond Phelan, who is the president of the ICSA, and Edmond is going to talk to us about the issues in the farming sector as well. What we'll do then is we will open the floor up to your comments, so I can see your comments here before me. So if you have any questions throughout the discussion, or if you have any questions that are coming to now, please put them in there, and each of our speakers will speak for about 10 minutes. They're about 7 to 10 minutes. We'll go to the questions. I'll put them to the speakers. We'll do our best to answer them when and where we can. But I just think this is something that affects us all, particularly in rural Ireland. If the farmers aren't getting a fair deal, rural Ireland will be the next to crumble, and we can't let that happen. I'm just going to finish my little segment here on a quote, because I think although we have seen COVID-19 has shown up a lot of the stress and a lot of pain, a lot of heartache for a lot of people, it's also kind of given us an opportunity. And there's a lot of people saying that we shouldn't go back to normal, and what was normal anyway, because if 2/3 of people running farms are in distress, if they're not able to get by, that's not acceptable. And although there is a lot of things are up in the air with this, we should be working together now on the ground to make sure farmers get a fair deal, and that it's not more kind of lining the pockets of the millionaires. So I'll just say another world is possible, and I think it's important that we focus on that, and that would be the cusp of tonight's meeting. So I'm going to head over to Tom there now, who's going to speak for 7 to 10 odd minutes. And thanks very much for joining us tonight, Tom.
Thanks, Adriana. My name is Tome Stephenson. I'm part of the group of lads that was on the picket line in the factories throughout the whole country, actually. We put in a lot of time, so we did in Hackettstown. We had to stay up day and night, so we had actually at that. We didn't just go away at night. We stayed all night, slept all night. The factory owners and the government, all sorts, they made us sleep out all night. We had to sleep out all night to, to put our point across. When we had that done, then after 2 months, we relinquished a little bit, and we got a task force going. And this task force was supposed to be the be all and end all of all our hard work. It started up okay, so it did after a while, but there was problems in the start. Now there's no problems now, except that they won't meet. They have no interest in meeting seemingly. All the farmer organisations have seemingly put them under pressure to get the task force going, but MII and the government have no intentions of doing anything like that just yet. So we then continue on. So we continued on from that there. So we did, and the next thing what happened then was we hear now recently that the EU wants to put in 25% of the land base in Europe into organics. That's all very, very fine and well. But the problem is with that, in 1990, Good Herdsman was set up, and it was sold 2 years ago to a man by the name of Larry Goodman, ABP. Now, if this continues and goes ahead, and he's going through because he has the deal done, he will effectively own 25% of the land base in Ireland, because we produce cattle and sheep off of that, and he will have full say of what he gets what he gives us for our cattle and sheep. I don't think that's right. We'll have to go back to the government and look for an independent factory that will take on the job if we want to go into organics. We can't let this happen. Now, there's another problem as well coming along. So there is, and that is farm to fork. Farm to fork is great and all like that sort is, but it's not doing anything for the farmer. It's both the processor and the retailer are going to reap the benefit there. It works out so it does that Borbia are putting all this forward, and the processor, the retailer, and the farmer are supposed to be equal partners in what we do on our farms, not the factories. The factories give us the price for the cattle, the flat rate price for the cattle, and then they come along and they give us the Borbia quality assured proof. But we want to take that away from the factories altogether, and fix that another way so that we will be independent of the factories there. They're given that as a bonus, as if it's out of their pocket. It's actually out of our pocket. That's coming. That's another little bit of a problem we have. And then you come along, so you do we go back then, so we will to the COVID crisis. There's an awful lot of chicken coming in, so there is, from Wuhan in China, exactly the epicenter where the coronavirus took place. Nobody has done anything about that. Now, I can't think of the name of the company that's bringing it in. That's another huge problem. Why haven't we our chicken farmers? They should be well able to supply meat and chicken to the Irish people without having to come in the whole way from China. You come along then, and you see super value then, and they're coming along. So they are here on an advertisement here recently, and they were selling fillet steaks, so they were at €43.99 per kilo, and they decided to halve the price and cut it down as far as €17.49. Now, that's driving us farmers absolutely mad altogether. We, at the moment, as of today, we get €3.65 a kilo per kilo for our beef. That is a huge difference from €34.99 a kilo. Where is the justification in that? What else have I to say there now? Oh yes, Borbia then have hold a what way would they do it? They hold a hammer over our heads, so they do that we have to do everything spot on and right. Now they're on about now doing extra work. Now we have to do extra work on our farm, put in LED lights, we have to put in water tanks, and various other things as well we have to do that we don't actually know much about yet. But Borbia have decided so to have that they're going to what way would I put it? What way would I put it, Tom? I lost my train of thought there now for a minute. Borbia are No, I've lost my train of thought there, Andrea. You may.
That's all right. That happens, Dan.
Hmm?
So,
Oh yes, the farmers need to be stakeholders in both in board B.
yeah.
It's
And
only the process. It's only the processors. It's only the processors and the retailer are in it. Are stakeholders at the moment. The farmer gets no opportunity to look in at all, but he has an equal share. But we're not allowed the equal share. The processors and the retailers push us out the door and they tell us what to do. But we are an equal share in that. I have signed up when I have a board B inspection, I sign off on everything. So I do. Board B signs off on it, and that's it. It's between and it has nothing got to do with the various farmer organisations. They have to do. The farmers pay 8 million, so they do for to sell their meat in every year. Every year they pay 8 million. So leave it alone there for that at the moment there now, if you can, Adriana.
yeah, thanks very much, Tom, honestly. And you hit the nail on, like, I mean, this is obviously a very big issue. So you hit the nail on the head there on a number of topics. And I think you're dead right in mentioning Larry Goodman. You can't discuss farming without mentioning the Larry Goodman, the monopoly man in Ireland here, and the deals he's consistently getting. And just to say as well how the COVID-19 crisis has affected them, I suppose, the other half and how they live in terms of Larry Goodman and Dennis O'Brien and the likes of that are actually owners of the private hospitals. And so when the government rightly took over the private hospitals to deal with this pandemic, they gave 115 million a month to the likes of these people, which is 4 times higher than what the Tories paid in England. So there's a lot of questions to be asked about the relationship Larry Goodman has with the Fine Gaelers and the Fianna Fáil and those in government. And even on the cap payments, which, you know, a lot of farmers need to survive on. The average farmer, I suppose, gets about 17,000, and that's even less for cattle farmers. They get about 13,000. Whereas Larry Goodman, one of the biggest millionaires in this country, gets 413,000 euros. So it's a deeply unequal system, but it's deeply unequal from the top upwards, and or that's what's driving that unequal edge. And we obviously, and I think it's important, people like Tom, the ordinary farmer, are speaking up about the issues that are affecting them and bringing forward policy solutions there. And what you're saying is that you are stakeholders, but you're totally kicked out of the equation and you're being taken for a ride now by the likes of this, and that has to stop. So what I'll just come back to now is there's a number of questions coming up, and Rachel Prendergast Spullen says, great to see this discussion happening, better farming practice and produce that doesn't bow to big businesses but has fair prices for fair producers. And there's a number of other questions coming up that I'll come back to after we go to Edmond Phelan. So I'll go to Edmond there for a couple of minutes as well. And thank you very much, Tom, for your contribution.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. I just pick up on a point that Tom made there about all the beef and chicken coming into this country. I often wonder, why do we need to bring in beef or chicken or lamb or anything into this country? This country produces 10 times more than it can eat. So we have to export 90% of our product. The reason it has been brought in is to undermine the product here. You see it in all things. I've seen it there over the years. We say at harvest time, we say in August, when farmers are trying to sell grain, some of the millers, they bring in boatloads of foreign grain to undercut the price at the time. I would say that's akin to, we say, if the health service brought in, we say, nurses from Indonesia, they can't pay them Indonesian wages. They have to pay them Irish wages because they have to live in this economy. So it's the same thing. We cannot compete against things that are produced at much lower costs because the much lower wages in these countries. First thing I'd like to say myself, sort of a bit prepared, would say, is to buy locally and to buy seasonally, and for 2 reasons: to support the local producer, and also when you buy seasonally, it means you're not importing. Like if you want strawberries at Christmas, you're not going to get them in Ireland, so they have to come from South Africa or someplace, and that's not good. It's not good for Irish producers, and nor is it good for the climate to be bringing stuff needlessly around the world. There's a lot of other things we need more in this country. We need more tillage in this country. We've probably gone too far into livestock. We do need more tillage to feed the people and also to feed the animals. I said it to the minister there a couple of months ago at the start of this crisis that there should be a big push to produce more vegetables in this country. And you might be wondering why a person representing beef and sheep farmers be talking about vegetables. But I do think that if the pandemic isn't over and we're depending on Spain or someplace to buy our produce, we may not have it. And you see there over the years, it only takes a couple of days of snow and there's a panic because that's the way the food supply chain works. It's just in time. Things are only in the shops the day they need it. Let's see what I touch on next. Just talk about the pandemic for a minute. It's a terrible affliction on the country, but there are one or two good things I've seen has come out of it. People are learning to cook again. What it is boredom or what, I don't know, but they're learning to cook, and this long term is a great thing. It's a life skill that will never leave you. There's an old saying about you should never waste a crisis. So you can either watch Netflix for the next 2 months, or you can learn a new skill, one that'll stand you in good stead going forward. I just touch it. Thomas has spoken a lot about cattle prices, so I'll just go there for a minute. For the last 6 or 7 years, and particularly since the milk quotas were lifted, there's a lot more calves born in this country. So we're actually seeing a cut of 10 to 15 cents a kilo, sort of a linear cut year on year. So that's after 6, 7 years, we're down about €1 a kilo from where we were in 2013, 14. That's 300, 350 euros a head. Costs have not gone down. Costs of anything have gone up. So it's quite easy to see that there's no money being made. Actually, I was just looking back there today. Back in the 80s, I got the same price for cattle almost, 35 years ago, I'd say, as I'm getting at the moment. And my costs are completely different. And that's one of the reasons why they've been forced into increasing production, increasing output, because the margin has gone so slim. It's actually gone now. There's no margin anymore. But the margin was gone so slim that they had to produce more and more to try and keep going. And when you do that, you're just on a race to the bottom, and you get to where we are today with absolutely no profit. And I've seen that now, talking to other farmers that are just cutting back. The people that may have had 200 cattle, they're going back to 100. They just don't see the point in doing it anymore. And whether that's good or bad, I don't know. People are still going to eat meat. I know there's some people are against meat, and that's perfectly okay. If somebody doesn't want to eat meat, I'm not going to try and force them to do it. But the majority of people are going to eat meat, and if the production falls too much here, where's it going to come from? It's going to come from South America, and that's certainly not going to do anything for the environment. It's shipping it. I don't know how far is it, 7,000 or 8,000 miles from Brazil, and not only that, but if you actually look at the maps over the years, the amount of rainforest that is disappearing year on year, it's absolutely criminal. We cannot allow the rape and pillaging of the environment in South America in the name of cheap food here. It just cannot be allowed to happen. And another one of my pet hates is labeling, or the lack of labeling in this country. I think most people do like to try and buy Irish, but it's very, very hard to know where your stuff is coming from. Some of the supermarkets have a great trick. They put a sort of a sad-looking tricolour on it and say produced in Ireland. When I see that, I'm fairly sure it's not produced in Ireland. And if you really search, there's a little circle which would say, it should say IE in it if it is Irish. A lot of this stuff is UK or somewhere else. But you can put a tricolour on it and call it what you like. I mean, for example, I could set up a company and call myself Murphy Meats, even though my name is Phelan. There's nothing to stop me doing it. So the labelling issues really have to be tightened up in this country. And I don't blame people because it's so confusing. As you see, I'm wearing glasses, and even with my glasses, it's a magnifying glass I'd want to try and find the labels. There's one time recently, I tend to, if I have time, to go into different stores just to see what they're selling, where it's coming from. And I think they'll be looking sideways at me the way I'd be picking up stuff and looking at it and putting it back. But I went into an Iceland store one day, and lo and behold, the labelling was actually very good. Now, it wasn't Irish, but at least they weren't pretending to be Irish. And you could read the label. So I've been onto Board B, and this is what I want to see. I want something that's very legible, easy to see, and not microscopic. Let's see. As I said to you about supporting local produce, I mean, this is very important. It's like a circular economy. If let's say if you're a hairdresser or whatever, if you're buying my product, I have money in my pocket. My wife or myself goes into your shop and gets a service from you. Or if there's a garage, I buy a car or I get my car serviced locally. This thing about and it's a thing I think it could come back to haunt us about the pandemic. Every day I see 3 or 4 delivery vans going around the country. Now, maybe they're just delivering from Irish stores. I don't know. That's fine. But if it's Amazon, all you're going to do is make another few billion for Jeff Bezos and let him buy another luxury yacht and leave the Irish people go out of business. But as I say, if you take anything from tonight, buy locally, and it's very, very good. If you want to, we can talk about climate change. Maybe come back to that later. Maybe we've enough at the moment. So if you want to open the floor there now, Adrian.
Thanks very much, Edmond, and thank you for that. Like you touched on a lot of good points there as well, and there's a lot of commentary coming from the floor here that I agree with it. I'll just go first into Regan Havey, if I'm pronouncing that name right, but she says, I believe we should aim for food self-sufficiency and that our agricultural products should be sustainable and, where possible, organic. Should we not be given fair cap subsidies to be established new and innovative farmers of sustainable organic produce? It is ridiculous that big macro farmers use chemical fertilizers and deplete the soil, get the lion's share of the subsidies. And she says it's typically beef barons exporting to Saudi Arabia, etc. So, I mean, there does seem to be that consensus, isn't it? Like the issue here is not the small and medium farmer who's trying to get by. The issue here is a system that favours those the big boys up the top of it. And at the same time, that macro level of farming, because it's done on such a grand scale, is not good for the environment, and it's definitely not good for the farmers' pockets on the ground here. So I think there's a lot in that. Now, there's a question directly here for Tom from Stephanie Hanlon. I'm actually just going to say as well, Stephanie Hanlon, she's a member of People for Profit, and she's a small farmer herself. Now, she was meant to be chairing this today, but probably an issue that a lot of people in rural Ireland will feel is that bad internet, so she couldn't log in, but she's with us in the comments section, so she could ask a question for Tom. What was the response you received on the picket lines? And I was down there with Tom, and I personally felt it was very good, and there was a lot of biscuits being handed in the whole time, which was always a good sign, Tom. But just I'll let you come back on that if you want, Tom.
We got lots of commitments, all right, so we did. We got lots of commitments. We had lots of people then supported us to no end. Even in Dublin, we were well fair play to us, all like that went on as well. We had what? We had a commitment by creed. So we had, if we actually stood down from the picket line, that the task force would be formed. But we done that, and the task force was formed, but there's nothing happening. We're the guys that stood on the gates and fought our battle and won our battle. But we left it to the farmer organisations then, because we were told to stand down. They wouldn't hear tell of us. The farmer organisations did not, and so far have not got the task force up and running. And it's up to the farm organisations to get that running now. The 3 main farmer organisations and possibly the 4. That's our problem there. But I want to go back to that lady in the very, very start there. We as suckler farmers and sheep farmers, dry stock farmers, we call ourselves. We produce all our food. All our food is very, very little fertilizer, because we can't afford to put out the fertilizer that's actually put out on the ground. We might put out a half a bag to the acre and maybe 2 bags. That'd be 100 kilos of fertilizer to grow a bit of hay or a bit of silage off it. Then, to keep our food local, the Department of Agriculture have shut down all the butcher stalls, or where abattoirs where they kill the cattle, and it's nearly costing $1 million for to sort it out. Now, we don't know where or how or when that happened, but it's still happening. I think last year there was 43 or 45 family butchers went out of business in Ireland. Those family butchers would buy some cattle off of me, that buy some cattle off Stephanie, so they would, various farmers around the country for to keep their product up, their nice product up. But now they have to go to the main dealers now of Larry Goodman and his ilk like that for to get their meat.
Yeah.
So
that is a big issue there, and you're dead right. And the quality that's produced as well, when it is done locally, is second to none, and it reduces the carbon footprint. I mean, and you've all touched on it, and it's coming up in the comments section. But why are we importing food on a mass scale when we can have it grown locally? I mean, you look at all the lorries and the trucks and the ships, the cargo ships, and the energy they have to use to just even bring it here. Never mind going beyond actual production. So I have another question here now from Rachel. She says to either speaker, so I might give this to Edmond, but feel free to come in then, Tom, if you want. She asks, was the REPS, was the REP scheme a more effective one than GLOS? And then she also asked, should farmers look at the old COOP system to get co-op? The old co-op system to get organised on a local level. So I think that even feeds into what you were saying there a little bit, Tom, about, I suppose, the big farmers organisations maybe didn't step up to the plate here, and that maybe it is up to the ordinary Joe to lead the charge in this. But I'll just go to yourself there, Edmond, on those questions if you have anything.
Okay, thanks very much. Just if I may go back for a second, just to what Tom was saying about the task force. I'm fairly sure that there is a meeting next week. I'm not 100% sure, but I've got it from the minister's office that they're hoping to have one next week. We've been pressing for it for quite some time. The question, REPS. Yes, REPS was a way better scheme than the current GLOS. It actually put real money in farmers' pockets. And at the time, there's a lot of very good work done, we say, on hedgerows, just tidying up the place. It actually made a huge difference to the countryside. This actually was there before ever there was a tax on plastic bags, and it just got people to tidy up everything, and it was great. GLOS, on the other hand, it's only a Mickey Mouse scheme. It actually nearly costs more to do it than what you actually get. Well, REPS actually delivered real money and was very important for the people with the smaller single farm payments, because a person that had a big payment, it didn't mean a lot to them, but somebody on 4,000 or 5,000, if they got another 5,000, it meant an awful lot to them.
Yeah. I think that's
there's something there about co-ops. Co-ops are fine. They work very well in the dairy sector. They never actually worked very well in the meat sector. I don't know why. We have looked at it, and maybe we'll have to look at it again. But there was cooperative meat. I think it was Tom, if I can't think, but the Cork Marts have some, or just IMP, wasn't it? There was a meat plant, and even Clover Meats in Waterford was a cooperative, and that went broke in I think 1984, if memory serves me correctly. And there was a lot of farmers who were shortchanged, and it happened after a strike. There was a strike by the workers for 2 weeks, and the bank didn't close it then. They waited until the factory opened, and after a fortnight's cattle coming in, millions worth of cattle came in, they bounced the checks, then they closed it and wouldn't pay out on any checks. I mean, to me, it was daylight robbery, but they got away with it. Yeah, okay, I'll pass it over to Tommy.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that, Edmund. And I think it kind of goes to show that the co-op might be a successful model anyway. Like, obviously, nothing is 100%, but that it's perhaps it can be sabotaged by above or by people that have ulterior motive, like the banks. If I'm picking up now, I don't know that example, but if I'm picking up that example correctly, Tom, do you have?
The farmers have to be an equal stakeholder in any decision that's made on our farms in Borbia. That's what has to happen. That's what has to happen. If that doesn't happen, it's no good. There'll be riots on the farms. So there will. We won't be. We're going to get out at the moment, so we may stay on our farms, but we're going to have to withdraw from the Borbia schemes. That's what we're going to have to do, unless they listen to us and give us an equal share. There's three companies involved: the farmers, the retailers, and the processors. We are not being played fair with. We're the little children, and they push us off to a corner to play with our tractors and our cows while they make the money. That has to stop. Yeah,
I agree with you, Tom. You know, and I really do admire, I suppose, the the strength, I suppose, coming out from the farming community on this, and that they're not sitting down quietly, and when you could get out and protest, you did it, and you made your point, and it's important that the government sit up and listen now, because at the end of the day, you're the ones who make the produce, and if the buck stops at G, if you stop, I mean, there's a lot of people, the whole system will go into awry. So it's important, I suppose, that the government recognise that and stop trying to belittle farmers, I think. Now, I just have a question from Art O'Leary here. Art O'Ell, actually, I'm not sure if it's O'Leary, but he says, why so little tillage? And we don't need so much beef. He comments, we don't need so much beef if 80% is exported. So just if anyone wants to come on that, and why is there a sort of historic neglect of the tillage sector? Anyone on that now?
I'm a tillage farmer, so I am, as well as a dry stock farmer. There's very little money in it because we have to work on the world market price for grain. There is millers that bring in boatloads, like what was said there earlier on, bring in boatloads of grain and depress the market at just in about a month's time. So we can't cope with that. The price of fertilizer, I think, is 70 or 80 euros a ton more in Ireland than it is in France or Germany or them countries where they grow the bigger amounts of it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tom.
A lot of the tillage land now is taken over by dairy, and we at huge sums of money. And even the sheep farmer, the dry stock farmer, cannot compete with the dairy at the moment. That's why our sheep production is going down, not up. It's going down. So it is. But like the dry stock farmer, it'll have to be looked after. It's a crisis situation. We're at this since last summer. We're still fighting every day. We fight and we argue and we try to cajole somebody to do something. We are getting slow progress, but we really need the farmer organisations to come on board with us and fight for us as well, because we are not allowed into the task force.
Yeah. And I think
pull out our members out of Board BIA, for starters. Pull out our members out of Board BIA. Now, ICSA have no members on Board BIA, but the IFA have. And the IFA should go and pull out those members and stand up for the farmer and give the farmer, like I'm fighting here tonight, Sam. It's family farms. I'm not talking about factory farms or lads with 300 and 400 cows and maybe 3,000 or 4,000 head or 2,000 head of cattle, fat feedlots. I'm talking about family farms here. Family farms are going to the wall. People will have to realise this. It's going to happen. There'll be no when they drive down out the country to look out the cities, drive out the country, they won't see a farmer making a 5 or 8 or 1,000 euros worth of bales of hay in a field, or a suckler cows, a cow sucking a calf sucking a cow, or a farmer shearing sheep inside the gate of a wall. They won't see that anymore. They'll see nothing, only big cattle and somebody be coming in to herd them and bring in a big loading shovel with feed on it to give them meal, to finish them off, and then they're gone, leaving no economy at all in the countryside.
And Tom, I think you're dead right there. If you look, it seems to be this government's agenda. Like, I mean, they look to, I suppose you can call them superpowers if you want, but to the likes of perhaps China or America, they have this mass globalization produce system. And it's not good for the ordinary people. It's definitely not good for the land. And it is the model that I think the government are trying to chase, where it's just completely privatized. It's market madness. There's no state intervention. There's no control. And you see the people at the top getting fatter and fatter. And it will starve rural Ireland. I mean, literally and figuratively, unfortunately. And I said at the start of this, I said, if the farmers go, then rural Ireland is too far behind. Then counties like Carlow and Kilkenny will feel that as well, the local communities. And we don't want that. So I think it's very important that we continue to fight this front. Now, we'll round up shortly. I just have another few questions here. Come in there, Edmond.
Just on the globalisation, the real case in point was, and it wasn't just Ireland, the whole country or the whole world had none of this protective gear, the PPE. It all had to come from China, because it's not that it's a difficult thing to make. We make all the ventilators, a lot of them made in Ireland, the medicines made in Ireland, but the simple things aren't, because it's cheaper to do it somewhere else. And I remember actually, just go off at a tangent for a second, a couple of years ago I was watching Dragon's Den, and there's a guy on it, and they said, are you getting the product made in China? No, he said, I didn't start this company to make jobs in China. I want jobs in Ireland. And I think the government is going to have to think like that. We have jobs in Ireland for Irish people.
Well, like, you know, obviously we're international really, and we're all in this together when it comes to, I suppose, workers and the exploitation that happens to people across the board. By all means, I get what you're saying there, but it is important that we kind of recognise if everything wasn't on a for-profit basis, they wouldn't have to drive prices down. They want to get the biggest margin in their profits, and to do that, they go to the cheapest exploiter and they push there. And what you see then is that they're not job creators, they're just exploiters of poor people. And that's not a system that we think is healthy for anyone or for the planet. So that's why we're always kind of promoting. And just with reference to the state or to the PPE there, I mean, if the state did produce that itself, if it took over production of the testing kits, we could have done it a lot quicker, a lot faster, and we would have had a lot more of it on board, but they didn't. They left it to the market, and then we saw a huge amount of price gouging and all that sort of happening. So I think when you leave everything for a profit-driven agenda, you go nowhere quickly, and it's where people are starting to see it. It's not sustainable. So just one question there is, I think organic farming. Well, Chris asks, what does Tom mean when he says organics? And you mentioned at the start, Tom, but just I imagine you meant organic farming.
Yes.
And then that's followed up then by, I think organic farming is a good path to follow. However, it's not accessible to most farms, and that's why it affects income. It needs to be available. And then the following question: how can we make it available?
Yes, it's back to Larry. It will be available. So if Larry gives a fair price and a good price for like, we'll just say a fiver now. Like, it's organic meat, I think at the moment this week is €4.50. But it's very, very hard to produce meat, organic meat at €4.50. A fiver or €5.20. Just say that now, for instance. Like, there'll be lots of farmers going to it, so there'll be lots of organic meat, lamb, and all sorts of vegetables. Like, we don't have to eat a straight carrot all the time. We can eat a crooked carrot too.
Yeah. I
And
think
the
you're right.
farmer has to be an equal share in that. Now we've lost. So we have our post offices, our garages, our butchers, our machinery sales, and a lot of other small factories that surround the countryside. We've lost all them at the moment. So we have, because everybody is headed into the cities. In rural Ireland, rural Ireland is devastated and decimated. That's even without the virus.
Yeah, you're right, Tom. And often I hear kind of politicians banding around about the rural-urban divide, you know. But the reality of the situation is that that's happening across the board in Ireland. People are losing jobs. That there's no public transport, and no wonder people are moving from rural Ireland into the urban city centres when they can't get home at night if they were working in town and didn't have a car. So it's an overhaul, a sort of a holistic approach I think we need to dealing with the issues there in rural Ireland and making sure it's doing well. So just a few things there that I suppose I will say, because we did kind of touch on climate change as well, and just people and I actually think it's very important. Sometimes I've gotten this myth that the environmental movement are against farmers, and I haven't seen it myself, and I've been up the crooked carrots, says Art, in relation to your comment, Tom. But I've actually seen a huge amount of support within environmental activist corners for the small and medium farmer. Like, we recognise that if there's any solution to climate change, it's with you, not opposed you. And I think it's very important we get that message out there. People for profit, for example, think it's important, and one of our policies would be to offer farmers $5,000 per hectare for any land that they can use, if it's planting trees or whichever, but anything that will take carbon out of the atmosphere, or hedgerows. Or whichever suits the land, you know what I mean? It would be, But and we do think it's important as well, if we're funding these things, because the question always comes back to how are you going to get the money for it, and that you have to introduce a profit levy on the major producers and the supermarkets. The supermarkets have run home and dry during this crisis, and we think it's very important that for an equal and sustainable society, you can't be afraid to tax millionaires. Now, it's on the same topic, but a different issue. If you're looking at Ryanair are saying that they're going to lay off about 3,000 workers. Now, Michael O'Leary is worth over 600 million. Now, I did the sums there today. If the average wage in Ryanair, if you just took the 600 for Michael O'Leary, no, we're not proposing that at all, but I'm just saying if you took the 600 million, he could provide 20,000 jobs of that, and he'd still have 40 million in his pocket. These guys are on massive money that we can barely comprehend, and what people for profit are imposing are small incremental levies on that to make sure money comes back down to empower the farmers and those in rural Ireland, and reduce the concentration and the power that these have, because they're monopolies and they're in bed with the status quo and the establishment on these issues. So I'm going to slowly wrap up here now. So I'll just come back. Is there any questions or comments that you want to come back on, or is there anything that
we need?
like
Tom,
to say?
I want to say something here. We need the consumer to back the Irish farmer, the family farm. That we're only we're family farmers. We need it to back us. And the last thing, environmental schemes. We have to be involved in them, and we have to be involved in environmental schemes and make the decisions along with the what would you call them, the policymakers. We have to be involved in that. So we need the farmer organisation. We absolutely need the farmer organisations. We need them so badly to step up to the plate and work.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah. And just look, I just want to say, because Anna WJ or JW has asked a few times here now. So she's asking, is Board B supportive of small and medium farmers? So I put that question to the two of you first, and then we'll close up.
Does Edmund want to answer first?
His sound is gone again.
Okay.
No, Edmund, it's very broken, unfortunately.
The farmer wants to be an equal stakeholder in Board B. He has to be equal, and with the processor, and it's a three-way partnership. The farmer, the processor, and the retailer. We have to sit down together and argue and sort out our differences, and not be fighting with one another. And the farmer organization has to remember. And if the case is then that the retailers and the processors won't do that, the farm organisations, which is namely IFA, will have to pull their members out of Board B. That's what's going to have to happen for us to get somewhere. Thank you, Adriana.
Thank you, Tom. Brilliant as always. I love listening to you. Edmund, do you want to see if the sound is back there? No. Can you hear him, Tom?
No.
No, Edmund, I'm afraid we've lost you. You'll yeah, sorry about that. Now look, we'll have to go on. But I just want to thank both our speakers for coming on and talking about very passionately and with a lot of knowledge. I think there's a huge amount sort of saying shop local, support your farmers, but there's definitely a message there for big government and the big monopolies of Larry Goodman that things are changing on the ground and we won't be accepting this anymore. And I think that's a very important thing that we need to get across. I want to thank everyone who left their comments. They're all really, really good, ranging from organic farming to fossil fuels, and it just shows the questions and the struggles and the issues affecting farmers on the ground here locally. So a big thank you to Tome Stephenson from the Beef Farmer Crisis Discussion Group, fantastic advocate and activist for farmers, and to Edmond Phelan, who took his time. Now I'm sorry we can't go to Edmund to close up, but he spoke very well with a lot of knowledge on the issues, and he's the president of the ICSA. So hopefully now we can get the ball rolling. Obviously, look, we're all in lockdown, but keep baking your bread. Think of your local farmer and your local producer when you go shopping next time. But moving forward, we think it's definitely time for some radical changes to the system of food production, so we're not as open to global shocks. The market is capped, and that we have more equality across the ground. So I'd just like to thank you all. If you want to get involved with People for Profit, if you like what we said, if you want to get involved in any of the if the discussion group with Tom here, you can just leave a comment and I can follow up with you as well, and you can join People for Profit at the link below. I've always wanted to do that. Look. Right, thanks very much to everyone, and to Dave, our tech guy who's behind the scenes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Aidan.